So I am so excited to be here with you this morning. I can't begin to tell you. And to talk with you about owning your power in order to actually make the Austin Manifesto happen. You know, it's one thing to talk about it, and I think we women, we do a lot of power summits, right? You could go to a power summit every day somewhere. If you Google women's leadership programs, you will find over 3 million. Yes, so we love to do this, but you all are beyond the talking stage now. That is clear. And so we're going to talk about owning your power and how to get there and make it really happen. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for it? Let me see your wave the napkins or whatever you've got there. Let's see a wave. All right, okay. We are going to do that. Being in Austin, I was telling some folks just a moment ago that I was actually born in Temple right down the road, so Austin always feels like home when I get here. And it's my favorite city. Thank you for giving me the chance to be here. I can't be in Austin, though, without thinking of Ann Richards and a story that she used to tell very often. It's a story about a little partridge who wanted so badly to learn how to fly, and it was having trouble. It was wandering around the barnyard crying. And she was flapping her wings, and it just didn't work. She came upon the bull, the barnyard bull, and the bull said, well, you know, I am a large and powerful animal. Why don't you peck around in my cow patties, and perhaps you will take some of my strength, and then you will be able to fly. And the little partridge pecked around and flapped her little wings, and she kind of got a little bit of lift off, so she was encouraged. And so she pecked around a little more, and sure enough, she flew. And she flew. She was so excited, she flew up to the top of a tall tree. And she was so excited that she began to sing. And as she was singing, a hunter went by and thought, that looks like dinner. Shot the little bird. The bird falls down. Now, I don't have the big hair, but you can envision Anne saying this. And the moral of the story is, bullshit can take you to the top, but it can't keep you there. Now, that's a great moral of the story, but I actually think there are two other morals of the story that are quite relevant to your discussion. One of them is that, you know, you are often encouraged when you're trying to make change to not be too noisy about it, to kind of stay in your little pile of shit, if I may say so. Not to change the system, but rather to try to adapt to it. And that is not always good advice, because ultimately, if you really want to get to parity, you've got to change the system. The second one is that as women, we have to do this authentically. And so unlike the little partridge who got her strength from the large bull, we have to figure out how to do this in ways that are really authentic to us as women. So, okay. Now, why would this not be going? So I want to take a quick read. I want to take a quick power read. I want to find out how much you like power. If you're thinking of a scale of 1 to 10, and I don't just mean like the idea of power, I mean like using your power to make things happen. So if you take 1 as being, I'm not so sure, it has negative connotations, and you take 10 as being, bring it on, I crave it, give me more, who would be at the 10? Who would be a perfect 10? One brave person. Okay. Okay, see, some more. That's what always happens. It's like one brave person holds up her hand, and then a few more people say, yeah, I really do like it. So how many of you would put yourself kind of around the middle? Sort of ambivalent, no, I need to do it, not so sure? So, okay, well, wherever you are on the scale, what we need to do is we need to get to the perfect 10. Oh, okay, all right. We don't want to own the 10. 9 is good. Okay, all right, we're going to get there. Well, so I want to tell you how I got interested in this topic of women in power. And it was in 2008, I wrote an article for Elle magazine on all the organizations that are trying to help women run for office. There are Republican organizations, Democratic organizations, there are nonpartisan organizations. Lulu from Women's Political Caucus was one of the first. I mean, they've been at it for decades and decades, have scarcely moved the dial in the last 20 years. And so I started looking into the question of why. Why is it? And I came to the conclusion that there are many reasons, but there are no excuses anymore. There are no excuses for why lawyers are stuck at the 16% mark in terms of equity partners of the major firms. No excuses for women to be stuck at 17% of Congress. 18% of the top leadership positions just across the board, according to a White House Project study last year. Worse yet, since I've been an activist for women for 40 years, and you know, I thought there'd been some progress here, and then I started calculating at the rate we're going how long it would take us to reach parity. 70 years. Well, I'd love to live another 70 years, but the odds are not great. So I decided I had better do something fast to try to make it happen much more quickly. And one of the reasons why, and this is one we don't talk about all that much, but I got to tell you, if there was a big learning for me in writing No Excuses, it was realizing the importance of money in women's lives in terms of being able to have the power to do what you need to do in your life. Women, on average, lose $500,000 over the course of our lives because we aren't at parity and because we don't negotiate as well as we should for our initial salaries. And this is something that must be changed. Now, so here's my story and how I got there, because believe me, I didn't start from a position of power. If you've seen the last picture show, you know it's about a dusty, dying town in West Texas. It was like a documentary of my life. I was Sybil Shepherd, but with dark hair. And so that's where I grew up. And although my father told me I could do anything my pretty little head desired, not bad for a man in the 1940s, my mother's life and what I learned from the culture, what I ingested from the culture, told me something completely different. That in fact, I was to marry young, have babies, that I was not to have career aspirations if I wanted to go to college. It was just to get what they used to say in those days was your MRS, you know, your Mrs. So here I am with my firstborn child at age 16. I really bought into the whole thing. This is what I thought I wanted. I got pregnant at 15. I had my first child at 16. I had 3 by the time I was 20. It was, believe me, a long road from there to the front lines of a social justice movement that I came to care very deeply about, in no small part because of the experience that I had had and the recognition that if women can't control their fertility, they cannot have any other power in their lives. They just simply cannot do anything else. You may recognize some of the other folks on the front line. Along the way, there were some epiphanies. Now, the first one was that I wasn't too happy inside that picket fence. Cooking and cleaning was not my thing. But the other one, very important one, was the advent of the birth control pill that allowed me to start to college. It took me 12 years to finish. But I eventually got there, and gradually along the way began to have other aspirations for myself. Even so, what I found was that just as I had sort of let myself be subsumed by what the culture wanted me to do as a young woman, I had done the same in my leadership role in Planned Parenthood. That I had subsumed myself to the movement. And by the time I left after a 30-year career, I literally didn't know who I was. There had never been aspirations for myself. It had been, oh, this is a fabulous thing to be able to have the opportunity to do. And I just gave it my all. And after I left, I literally turned into a little bowl of jelly. I had no idea. So I was vulnerable, and I was persuaded that what I would love to do in my next book, I had already written 2 by then, was to write this book that I wrote with Kathleen Turner about her life and lessons. And Kathleen and I had a great 50-50 relationship. Everything was supposed to be 50-50. Well, this is when I had my real comeuppance. So we're at the publisher having our big publicity preparation meeting. getting ready for the book launch. The publicist turned his back to me, looked only at Kathleen, and despite my throwing a big fit, I knew I was cooked. It was over. I had done all the work. I was not going to get one bit of visibility, publicity, anything. It was in that moment that I recognized, Gloria, you've done it again. You know, once again, you have used your voice to promote someone else, and you have not been actually moving yourself forward to where you say you want to go. And that was really my pivotal moment. So for anybody who is still struggling with the issue of power, just know that I was already 63 years old and a grandmother of many before it finally happened to me. So there's always hope. The power is in our hands. There is no question that the power is in our hands. The rest of the world is looking at us and saying women are it. But like Catherine Bigelow, the first woman to receive an Academy Award for directing, very often women stand there, we stand there with our Oscars in our hands without acknowledging, as she never once liked to say, oh yes, it does make a difference that I'm a woman, and I'm proud that I'm a woman and I'm achieving this. And she didn't use that opportunity to help advance other women. And so that, I think, is really a key thing for women right now. There are many women, I mean, the doors are open, but there are many women walking through them who don't realize that you didn't do that by yourself, and you need to help other people along the way, too. So I found that the problem was that women weren't walking through the doors as quickly or in numbers sufficient to actually make that big change happen, and that it really is up to us, that we have to own our power and we have to then actualize it in some very specific and concrete ways. My friend Katie Orenstein, this is one example of that I think is very instructive. My friend Katie Orenstein, who started the Op-Ed Project, heard women complaining that we only get 15% of the bylines on the opinion pages of major newspapers across the country. Well, you can get pretty mad about that until she did her research, and she found out that women only submit 15% of the op-eds. Well, the moral of the story there is quite obvious. You can't get your op-ed published if you don't submit. You can't move ahead if you don't put yourself forward for it. So that's really important. And that, of course, is exactly what the Austin Manifesto does. Now, there were 3 specific phrases in the Austin Manifesto that really had an impact on me when I read it. The first one, the statement that you're going to eliminate barriers. The second one, that legal employers must achieve gender diversity. And the third one, to achieve gender parity. So what I want to do is to unpack each of those and to apply one of the power tools in my book, No Excuses, to each one of those. To get there, however, first, I want to share with you what I think was the biggest learning that I had when I was researching and talking with women all across the country for No Excuses. And it was this, that it really, for the most part, I don't care how highly placed women are, you will rarely find a woman who will raise her hand and say, yes, I really love power, I really love having it, and here's why. And I finally came to the conclusion that it's because we have in our minds an now outdated idea of power, definition of power, that is the power over. Power over implies somebody can make you do something. That's not a good thing. And women have borne the brunt of that negative aspect of power for most of human history. We've been discriminated against, we have been raped, we have been beaten, why would we want to have that? It's an idea of power where power is a finite pie, and if I take a slice, there's less for you. It's an idea of power that actually makes you feel powerless because it's oppressive. But once we shift our definition of power to a more expansive power to, the power to accomplish things in this world for ourselves, our kids, our family, our community, our world, then power becomes something that helps you solve problems. It's how you create innovations and solutions to things. And I would see women's faces literally relax. It just seem to change everything, because we know inherently that power is an infinite resource. And the more there is, the more there is. And that when you think of power as the power to, that makes you feel powerful. And the power to, therefore, becomes leadership. And that's the change we need to make in our own heads if we're going to truly make the transition to an equal place in this world, and to achieving parity, to making the words that are on the piece of paper of the Austin Manifesto actually happen. But to do that, you need your power tools. Now see, I had to make a little note to myself at the bottom of this, tell them about the bookmarks and the feedback forms that you have on your table, because I still forget to do that, even though I'm telling you how to do all these things. So you have, the bookmarks give you all the power tools just in a list, and they're in the book, of course, which you have received. And the flyer just lets you give me feedback if you would like to give me some feedback about anything any thoughts that you have about what I've had to say, join my mailing list, and also to know how to reach me on my blogs and my website, which I invite you to do, and also on Facebook, where I hang out way too much. So the first power tool that I wanted to share with you that I think relates to the goal of eliminating barriers is to define your own terms. Now, that's what we as lawyers do every day, right? Right? We, I say you, but you might ask me that question, isn't that what I do every day already? Well, yes, but you know what? You do it for other people. I'm talking about for yourself. I'm talking about for yourself. And so that's like what I did when I talked about changing the definition of power from power over to power to, just taking the definition and making it your own. And that's how we can get to authenticity. I think that, where's Laura? Lauren Rickleen over here does a great job in her book, Ending the Gauntlet. I'm sorry, it is still early. Ending the Gauntlet, of talking about how specific things that you can do to change the culture within organizations. And I was struck, however, when I was recently doing a webinar for some women lawyers, that a woman in her 30s said to me, I think my peers, she said, are putting their weapons down, and just going home, because they don't think that they will ever be able to be successful in the culture that we're living in our firms, or wherever we're practicing law. And you know, what struck me is that the very metaphor of putting our weapons down is not really authentic. It doesn't fit the culture that women have ourselves. And so no wonder, if that's the way they're thinking about it as the power over, no wonder it wasn't working for them. So we have to change how we think. We have to define our own terms first before someone else defines them for us. And when we do that, I think we can make tremendous changes. Someone else told me about some women who are, the work-life issue always seems to get put on women's shoulders. It's always up to women to figure out how to do work-life balance. And so recently someone told me about some women who have started creating their own law firms in which they work on a project-by-project basis. They sell their services to corporations who want to outsource on a project-by-project basis. And when they do that, they're able to then manage their own time and do it in their own way, and they're finding that to be authentic to them. I'm not saying that there's any one solution. I'm just saying that, you know, you'd have to define your own terms and what is really going to work for you. And it's easier to do in a time of chaos. So this statement, legal employers must achieve gender diversity, I wanted to apply the power tool Carpe the chaos to. No, they don't. They don't have to. Nobody willingly steps aside. Nobody will willingly step aside and cede their power to you. I'm sorry. It will not happen. I don't care how good your reasons may be. It's not going to happen. You have to step forward and take it yourself. And when there is chaos, in any industry, in any situation, that's the time that people are more open to new ways of doing things. It was only when the financial meltdown happened that people started asking, what if Lehman Brothers had been Lehman Sisters? And that is what has opened the doors to many more women in the financial industry and many more opportunities than they've had before. And I always like to use as inspiration Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth could not have started life with less power. She was born a slave. She had, I think, 13 children, of whom 5 lived. She had to go off and leave the ones she had when she left her master. She said, I walked away. I didn't escape. I walked away, head held high. And she became ultimately a leading abolitionist, a leading women's rights leader, orator, and a Methodist minister. And one of the last acts that she did was she almost got arrested for voting in Washington, D.C. Sojourner Truth said, and I believe it's so true, if women want more rights than they've got, why don't they just take them? Love that attitude. And the third power tool that I want to share with you of the 9, I think applies to this is really the core of the Austin Manifesto, achieve gender parity. And to achieve gender parity, create a movement is what we have to do. You know, each one of us on our own, we can do a lot. And we can generally make a pretty happy life for ourselves. But women often feel isolated. Women often feel in the workplace like they do have to solve their problems themselves, and if they talk too much about it, it's going to reflect badly on them. And not only will nothing change, but it might actually get worse. Well, the fact is, there's probably at least one other person who has your same issue, wherever you may be. And so the 3 elements of movement building that I believe can apply to anything, anywhere, whether it's work, politics, civic life, or personal life, are these principles. Be a sister. Ask for help when you need it. Reach out to someone else if you think she needs help. Have the courage to raise the issues. That can be tough, especially when you're dealing in a very male-dominated kind of culture. But we have to raise the issues, and it's a lot easier to do when you're doing it with your sisters and with brothers who want to partner with you, because I think there's a whole generation of young men now who want to make exactly the same changes that younger women want in the workplace. And when you put those 2 together, sister and courage, and you begin to create a step-by-step plan, such as you've done with the Austin Manifesto, you can change the world. And there is no question in my mind that the women in this room have the power in your hands to change the world. You have more than started the American Revolution. You have more than, there are more of you than started what happened in Egypt and culminated in Tahrir Square. I just want you to know and feel that power that you have. I can feel it coming at me right up here. And I don't want you to get lost in your daily work so much that you don't realize yourself just how much power you have, and that you can, if you work together as a movement, actually change everything, and it will be you who did it. And so I think the question that I'd like you to ask yourself right now is, what will you do to help the woman next to you realize her power too? You know, where's Eileen Lang? I saw you earlier. And I'm sure you probably talked about the new Catalyst study that defined the difference between sponsorship and mentorship, and how, well, each one of us can sponsor other women, or we can ask to be sponsored, and we can give our loyalty in exchange for that sponsorship. We can, I mean, don't get put on a diversity committee unless you use it to build your own network and help each other actually get into the more powerful kinds of positions. And if rainmaking is what is golden, then what if all of you joined together to create a downpour? Well, suddenly, everybody would be coming to you, and you would have parity and then some. It's being that kind of intentional, and having that kind of intention, being intentional, and going for it. Now, so as I was finishing up the last stages of No Excuses, and I want to close with this story, I came across one of those typos that spell check cannot save you from. You ever had one of those? Anybody else? I've had the old pubic public myself. First line of an op-ed. Oh my gosh, nobody caught it. Nobody caught it. But I was already a month late turning in my manuscript, and I was at that point where I had to press send the next morning. It had to go to my editor. I could not make any more changes. That was just the most painful moment. And I came across this typo. The word was supposed to be parity, but somehow it had been transformed into a party. So here's the thing. We are all going to have a great big party when women do reach parity. And I want you, so let's spell it together, okay? We're going to get it right. P-A-R-I-T-Y. And I want you to promise me this, please. When we get to that point, when you get to the point where you can say of the Austin Manifesto, we are there, will you invite me to that parity party? All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You will be there before you know it. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.